So I had some requests to do what I've done in years past. If I'm not going to talk about every team's individual performance in the NFL draft in their own separate videos, can I at least do division by division recaps? So I think that's a reasonable request. It only requires me to do 8 videos as opposed to 32. And I don't know about you, it sounds a lot more palatable to me. And probably should to you too. I mean, I realize I'm a sexy beast at all of age 36 and all, but 32 videos of me in a short time frame might be asking a little bit of much, but I do it for other shit, so who knows. Anyways, so let's kick this off, this division by division recap of the 2017 NFL Draft, by looking at the AFC East. And just like in every other video for the other 7 divisions in the NFL, I'm going to start off with the worst and then get to the best, who I thought had the best performance. And of course, if we're talking about the AFC East, you'd feel remiss if you didn't think about the New York Jets as being the worst. And, you know, the New York Jets and failures in the NFL draft kind of go hand in hand. Now, with that said, I don't think their performance in the draft was so brutal or so bad that they deserve to be completely and totally buried for it. I think the fact that they took yet another defensive player in round 1, which they've done every year since 2010. This is now 8 straight drafts that they've done so, and the defense is nowhere close to being elite, borders on the height of stupidity from a philosophical standpoint, although you can understand the logic for them of wanting to take a potentially culture-changing player like a Jamal Adams. That in itself could make sense. The backing it up in round 2 and taking another safety in Marcus May, spending 2 of your first 3 picks on the defensive side of the ball again, which you've done every year since 2010. Again, that's 8 years in a row now, 8 drafts in a row. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the result to be any different. And they're doing it again. Now, the positive thing for the Jets fans is that it seems like this organization is positioning itself to either suck for Sam Darnold or job for Josh Allen and get that #1 overall pick in 2018. And if that's what's going on here, they are doing a magnificent job of just that. Magnificent job. The one thing I really question about the Jets draft, above all else, is in round 2, you're sitting there and you pass on Dalvin Cook. Like, that felt like a going full retard type of moment, if you get what I mean. Excuse me. That felt like something, the type of selection, that you're going to look back years from now and be like, oh, we could have just taken that dude. Oh, they feel like jackasses for not taking him. I mean, Dalvin Cook was a guy a couple of months ago you could have maybe looked at the Jets potentially taking at 6th overall. Now you get him in the early portion of round 2 and you pass on him. I'm sorry, I can't get down with that. And furthermore, from just a philosophy standpoint, at some point in time, you have to address the offensive side of the ball in the ever-loving flipping draft. And trying to bunch together wide receivers in the mid-rounds doesn't get it done. You did that a couple of years ago with Jalen Saunders and Shaq Evans, and how'd that work out for you? How'd that work out for you? I mean, I could have made an argument for the Jets at this point, sitting there at pick 6 and taking a Mike Williams, a John Ross, or a Christian McCaffrey, because at least it would have been something different philosophically. So on the one hand, I don't want to bash the Adams pick too much because I don't have a ton of problem with it, but it just kind of goes into the larger picture of the Jets organization and who they've been over the years, is what I'm saying. I still think Jamal Adams was their best pick. I think their worst pick was Marcus May, not so much a reflection of Marcus May, but there's no way you're going to convince me on your big board or any big board that has any type of credibility at all that a Marcus May was the absolute best player on the board at that point in time. Furthermore, was a better player than Dalvin Cook. That's insane. In terms of a player that I think could come out of this draft and surprise a little bit might be Jordan Leggett, the tight end from Clemson. You're looking at a guy that's had some big moments, you know, an athletic tight end that kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit in a really good tight end class in this draft. I think he's a guy that could be a year-1 starter for them and be a productive player. And Jets fans know you've needed some production out of the tight end position for a long, long time. Hopefully for you, Jason Morrow, he is not. But I gave him a C- because it still wasn't a very good performance. The Miami Dolphins were just kind of like an average C. I thought they reached massively for Charles Harris in round 1, the defensive end from Missouri. I didn't see it. I had a 4th-round grade on him. I'm sure I'm in the minority here, but I think there are other people that thought that this guy was massively overrated too. Raekwon McMillan in round 2, the linebacker from Ohio State, I actually like that pick much better. He's a guy, we'll see where he fits in in that Miami linebacking core. But I didn't have much of a problem with that pick. And honestly, I didn't have much of a problem with the Tankersley pick in round 3. Here's a guy that I thought from a coverage standpoint was better than his old secondary mate, Mackenzie Alexander, who went in the second round to the Vikings in 2016. I think from a coverage aspect, in terms of a tools aspect, I think Tankersley has more. He's absolutely worthless in run support, mind you. But in round 3, you're looking at a guy that has some starting ability as a cover guy, and hopefully he decides he wants to tackle somebody and not always make business decisions. But their best pick to me was in the 5th round, might be the guard from Utah, Isaac Asiata. I still, like I said, think that Charles Harris was a massive reach. At that point in time, if I were them, I probably would have taken Taco Charlton if I was going to take a defensive end. A guy that could surprise potentially might be Davon Godchaux from LSU. He might be a guy that gives them a little bit of pocket penetration ability from the interior that they really don't have. But again, you just look at the Dolphins draft. It didn't suck. It just doesn't grab you by the cojones either, honestly. Now we get to the Buffalo Bills, and I think some people were surprised that I didn't put them in the biggest losers category when I talked about the biggest losers for the 2017 draft. I understand why people would feel that way, and here's kind of my take on it. I think it's ridiculous and dumb that you've probably known for months that you were heading in a direction where you wanted to get rid of this guy and potentially his whole staff, the whole entire scouting department. I think getting rid of the entire scouting department was an overreaction and frankly ridiculous because you're just carte blanche wiping out everybody and saying everybody sucks, which probably isn't the case. You probably had some guys that weren't very good at their job, and you probably had some guys that were good at their job, but you don't know because you got rid of all of them. The general manager, Doug Whaley, yes, he needed to go. I also understand if you got to a point where maybe you weren't that sure until you got to like March or maybe the beginning of April, you get to a point where that whole scouting department, that front office, has done all the prep work for that draft. It's not necessarily a good idea to just fire them a few weeks before the draft and then try to bring in a whole new infrastructure and then try to get them to prepare for the draft. That's not really how it works. It feels like they should have known months ago they were going to fire him, so they should have done it as soon as the season ended. Especially if you're talking about having him have any influence, Doug Whaley, in the hiring of McDermott to be the head coach. It just seems kind of ridiculous. But when you look at the Bills' performance in this draft, it was kind of eh. I mean, I know people will always be in love with the fact that a team like Buffalo traded back from 10 to 27 and they got a first-round pick next year. Yeah, that's great, but that first-round pick is going to be in the mid to high 20s or mid to low 20s, however you want to look at it, either way. So they didn't get that much. And they passed on the chance to draft a guy like a Marshawn Lattimore, a Malik Hooker, a Jonathan Allen, a Patrick Mahomes, a Deshaun Watson. This was one of these situations where even though they traded back and I felt like they got a solid player, even though I think he was a bit of a reach in Tre'Davious White. I think he's a year-one starter for them, though I'll say that. He's a good player. Just because you can trade back doesn't mean you always should. And sometimes you should stay in a position to take those marquee players because not every draft has marquee players available and elite type of talents available at your draft position. And the ironic thing is for the Bills, they were in a position, not the quarterbacks obviously, but for other positions, especially on the defensive side of the ball, there were several elite prospects on my board that were still there for them at pick 10. They probably should have just stayed there and picked at 10. That's my thought on it. Trading up for Zay Jones in round 2, as I said in my scouting report for him, he reminded me quite a bit of Marty Booker. So he's a guy that I expect to be able to do some things at the NFL level. You might hear some comparisons to Jarvis Landry. He looked good in terms of the offseason stuff, the Senior Bowl, the Combine. But when you watch his film from East Carolina, he didn't have that type of great quickness to get a lot of separation. And if he struggled to average 10 yards a catch receiving in college, how is he going to be able to do that at the NFL level? I'm just saying. Other than this draft, I look at it. Maybe Nathan Peterman, the quarterback from Pittsburgh, gets a chance to start at some point in time and he could surprise a little bit. This draft, to me, just left a lot to be desired. And I don't necessarily agree with the approach of trading back. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And it doesn't always mean it's a good idea. See, in a lot of other years, the Cleveland Browns, it's just one of many examples. But I gave them a C because they did still acquire a first-round pick for 2018. They've got 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick in a class of quarterbacks that's going to be vastly superior to this one was. So it could all end up working out for the Bills, especially for a new front office. But I think the runaway winners of this draft for the AFC East were the New England Patriots. Now, I don't think that comes in terms of the actual players selected. I thought Derek Rivers was a massive reach in the third round. I really do. I was not impressed with him at all. But I could see where he fits the New England Patriots, and I could see a Bill Belichick getting more out of him than a lot of other teams would. There are things to like about guys like Garcia and Weiss and McDermott, but there's a very good chance that all four of these guys wash out, and none of these guys really contribute in 2007 or even 2018 and beyond. But when you look at the bigger picture of what the Patriots did, why I gave them a B-, you got Brandin Cooks for the 32nd overall pick. Brandin Cooks was probably better than anybody else you could have drafted at pick number 32. They were able to swap their late round 2 pick to move back just a few spots into round number 3 to get a guy like Kony Ealy, who's shown some flashes, especially in the Super Bowl for the Panthers 2 years ago, 2 seasons ago. These are guys that have shown, what they can do, especially Brandin Cooks. You're getting a game-breaking type of vertical threat for Brady in the passing game. You're getting Kony Ealy, a guy that you feel like could be coached up by Belichick and become a 9-10 sack type of dude. When you're the Patriots, you've got Tom Brady. You got to win now. So I applaud the Patriots for sitting there and being aggressive and going out and getting veteran players and more proven commodities instead of just being in this mode of trying to draft and develop people because they didn't need to be in that position. Whether you have Tom Brady and Bill Belichick in your organization for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more years, whatever it might be, however long one or both of them together are still there, that's your window of opportunity to potentially win a championship. So damn the future, it is all about the right here and right now. And the approach that the Patriots took with this, it's either we draft players to make our team better or we use those draft picks to make our team better by acquiring more proven commodities that are more ready to contribute and play right away. That's a way you can win a draft. And the New England Patriots, at least from the divisions aspect, because of the position they were in, because of the decisions they made, I felt like they were the winners of the AFC East. Still only a B- because I didn't like some of the picks of players that the Patriots actually made with the 4 draft selections they had. But in the grand scheme of things, it probably really doesn't matter that much because this draft was about Brandin Cooks and Kony Ealy for them, not Derek Rivers or Antonio Garcia.